When there was pubs in Gladstone Street at the time, there was pubs all across O'Connell Street. It was about near the Summerhill Terrace area. There must have been about 13 or 14 pubs. I probably could name about a dozen of them. Close by, like, you know, on Bridge Street alone, you know, in the Bridge Street area, you would have 4 or 5 pubs, sort of, and over as far as, say, Thomas Street. Along the quay from, you mentioned Lundigan's earlier on, but you had, on the Bilberry side, you had, what was it called? Sinnett's pub. And then the Bridge Hotel had a pub, John Joe Breen's pub. Breen's was known as. And there, just down from that was Morris Lundigan's. And further down where Maud Donnelly had a pub later on, there was a pub. And then further on where the corner bar used to be. I forget the names of it. But then you go up the street, Harney's was there, which was the Blue Haven. We might talk about that later on, because you might remember the Blues Club up, Pete Kelly from Morrison Road playing they were Docker's sons that used to get music. We can talk about that. And then up to Johnny the Bromheads. And you had the Hole in the Wall on Ann Street, which was close enough to Summerhill Terrace. And then you had 3 or 4 pubs in the Glen alone in that triangle. You had Hanley's pub, and you had, you know where Paddy Fleming's, and the people before that is the only people that I remember there. Crackie's was called. Krakensky was the owner. They were Poles. I always thought they were Hungarians, but there was a bit of chat online there a couple of months ago, and the woman said, "Oh no, I thought they were Hungarian because the information we had was that they had fled in 1956, the Hungarian Revolution, when the Russians invaded, sort of, you know, and a lot of people were displaced. But they came over and but it turned out this lady said, "Oh, I'm delighted to hear my family are mentioned," because it was a very good house, and music and singing, and dockers would have rolls of notes at a choke of horse when they finish a ship, like, you know. So if you fell into their company, you know, you'd get a few points, like, you know, if you got your entrance fee, as people used to say in those days. You can imagine, money was tight. So if there was a big coal boat and it was going to finish, you know, early in the afternoon, and if you were down, and fellas used to stand, they used to call it point duty around the Bridge Hotel and the Dominican church on the corners there. Maybe after Mass, even fellas would be waiting to get a capture, they used to call it. Did you ever hear that term? Yeah, if you got a capture, it's all. If you had your entrance fee, which is the money to get a point or two, and what was it, 10 old pence for a large bottle, you know, the large Guinness. So you could be in luck, depending on, you know, and a lot of the fellas were generous, sort of, and, you know, knew the story. So Crackie's pub was music and singing and what have you. Paddy Fleming took it over, famous for darts after. And you had the Glen Bar, then was where the showboat is.
And the Glen had an interesting reputation at one stage.
It had what?
An interesting reputation.
It had, yeah. Yeah, well, look, all those pubs that I mentioned, and the quay was full of, the quay was, it was an exciting place in a way and colourful, you know what I mean? And my memory mostly is from, you know, the early 60s of it, because as a youngster up to 10, you're kind of, you're messing about and kind of, you know, you're not taking as much notice, you take more notice. But there was always exotic seafarers around, sort of, you know, and there'd be ships tied up on the Ford Wharf, just across the road from the Bridge Hotel there now, from Morris Lundigan's pub. And on the north side there'd be a line of ships, you know, and down further in the Clyde you'd have ships there. So seafarers kind of often mingle, and they might kind of, you know, they might see a ship with the, it might have been a company they worked for in the past, you know, you'd see the livery on the funnels in those days of the company. So you might call up and see were any of your mates still on the ship or whatever. And so they'd all mix.